Hi, sorry about that. Just setting up. I hope you can all hear and see me now. Uh, um, good afternoon. I'm again coming from you from my apartment in Brno, not too far away from Bratislava, where I was supposed to be today. It's a funny old world, isn't it? I've missed training sessions in Serbia and the UK, and I was supposed to go to Romania tomorrow. Doesn't look as though that's going to happen. I always assumed the reason that my apartment wasn't really clean is because of lack of time. Over the last 3 weeks, I've realized that's not the problem. So there are other reasons, obviously. But I'm hoping before the end of this lockdown, I get that cleaning bug because I don't want to waste the opportunity. All right, so we're talking about shifting goals and changing focus. There's a lot of changes that have been going on over the last few weeks and months. Let me just get rid of this here, mute the conversations. So what sort of changes have we seen? Well, since I've been teaching, I've seen lots of changes in terms of technology. I've seen a lot of changes. I mean, it's amazing how quickly things move. I first came to Czechia in '97, and the first thing that I was given, I was director of studies of a private language school here in Brno, and I was given a mobile phone, and I looked at it and I thought, what on earth is this? And of course I used it to call my co-teachers and friends, and I used it basically as a telephone, a portable telephone. Last year, there were actually more text messages sent than phone calls made, so there's been a change. But it's interesting to notice that the first text message was only sent in 1992. So a huge change in the way society operates over a short period of time. Again, I've got 2 teenage daughters, and they don't use their phone to do much else rather than text chat and stream videos. And the first mobile phone with internet access was only released in '96. So we've seen a lot of changes, and we're going to see a lot more changes very quickly. One of the things, I'm of a certain generation, I have an older brother. And so, of course, when it came to clothes, I was always wearing his clothes. He's 4 years older than I am. And we call this sort of, and again, playing with his toys, we call this sort of stuff hand-me-downs. I'm sure you have a similar expression in Slovak. But increasingly, when it comes to technology, the old mobile phone goes to grandpa, or the old tablet goes to grandma. So we have this this hand me up situation, which I think is quite interesting. Clothes go down, technology goes up, and of course there's been a big change in how teachers are perceived. I remember actually the first lesson I taught in a Czech gymnasium in the '90s. When I came into the room, all the students stood up and said, good afternoon, sir, in English. And there's been a lot of changes since that time. There's actually something called, I don't know if you know it, the Global Teacher Status Index. It's quite interesting because it looks at the global status of lots of different jobs. And it gives every job a grade between 1 being the lowest social status and 14 being the highest social status. And it asks a number of people, you know, where do they perceive the social status of teachers? And when it comes to the highest, we've got doctors, lawyers, you know, what we'd expect. Head teachers are still up there, you know, principals of schools. And you can see in the middle, we've got a secondary school teacher, and then just below that, we've got a primary school teacher. Now, where's the trend? Are we going up or are we going down? Well, I think you can imagine that we're going down. One of the things that's quite interesting is as well as looking for a grade for one particular job, they ask people to identify a job of a similar social status. And you've got some very traditional countries where if you look at the screen, you can see China and Russia, still very traditional. When they said teacher, they equated teaching with doctor, which is, as we notice, has got quite a high status. But when you start looking at European countries, we seem to be equated more with librarians or nurses, which are a slightly lower social status, or social workers, which are seen as interfering a little bit, which are even lower. So there is a downward slide, and of course this has an effect. This was a newspaper headline from the Guardian last year, the end of last year, and it was basically a fifth of teachers plan to leave the profession within 2 years. And again, some of the reasons that they gave for wanting to leave were quotes that I think anyone working in secondary schools can equate to, regardless of whether it's in England or anywhere else. 2/5 wanted to quit within 5 years, and they blamed out of control workload pressures and excessive accountability. They talked about their personal life not existing anymore. And again, a young family, and despite working part-time, I've come to realize that a job in education is not conducive to family life. My job is no longer about children. It's just a 60-hour week with pressure to push children's achievement data through. Now, I can certainly identify with that. I think it's a lot of pressure. Working 70 hours a week for many years has meant my health and family life have suffered. I'm getting out before the job kills me. So we all know as teachers that teaching is a very demanding job. This is me teaching in the Ukraine last year. And I have to say, I didn't find it that demanding. Here I was doing a course teaching teachers to be business English trainers. And it was great because my students were motivated adult learners. So I would say that I have a completely different feel when it comes to teaching adults. I enjoy teaching kids, but I find the amount of energy required to teach younger learners is a lot. You know, it really sort of drains you a little bit. You have to be hyper all the time. And teenagers is more stressful because you have other things like discipline and those sorts of stuff. But I really enjoy teaching adults. So I've got a little question for you here. What's the difference between an adult learner and a secondary school student? Maybe if we put into I know we've got tertiary students in the middle who sometimes can behave in quite an immature way, but let's place them into the adult category. So can you just have a little reflection and think, what's the difference between an adult learner and let's see if I can get the chat box up. Just have a think of that. Okay. Well, I'd say there are certain things you need to consider. First of all, if you're 13 years old, there is no escape for you. You have to go to school. Whereas if you're an adult learner, learning isn't imposed on you. It's your choice. So that's a big difference. Also, time. If you're an adult, we presume you're going to be working, and so you have less time available for study. If you're a school age, a secondary school student, most of your time is devoted to schoolwork. Motivation is entirely different too. Motivation might come from the other stakeholders. If you're a secondary school student, generally are your parents wanting you to do well, whereas the other stakeholders for adults might be the company if they pay for an English course, or it might be because you want to pass an international exam to get a promotion at a job. So the motivations are very different. The reasons for learning, again, are completely different. Again, the reasons for learning in a secondary school are because you need to pass the secondary school leaving examination in order to go on to tertiary education. The lesson format, again, is very different. You might have more of a blended learning type of course if you're an adult learner. You might only have one lesson a week face to face. In a secondary school, it's one of many. You might have a 45-minute lesson followed by a 45-minute maths lesson. Whereas in a private language school, it might be a 90-minute lesson delivered after work on a let's say Thursday evening. And of course, the teacher roles are different. As I mentioned, sometimes as a secondary school teacher, one of the roles that you have to deliver is that of being a disciplinarian or being a timekeeper, because you have to follow the curricula very closely, and you've got a lot to include in the lessons. Not so much with an adult learners. So you might be considered a coach. You might be teaching lessons one-to-one, which are very different from a classroom. And the learning outcomes are very different. The learning outcomes in secondary school are linked to the national curricula. The learning outcomes with adult learners might be negotiated or come from the client. If you've got a student who is going on a business trip to do a presentation and they want to have practice, they've got very refined learning outcomes. And again, because of the time, a secondary school student feels as though they're stuck in education for years, whereas an adult learner might buy a course that only lasts 3 months. And the expectations are very different too. So there are a lot of differences between an adult learner and a secondary school student. And so you'd expect an adult learner, because generally they're paying for the course, to be more autonomous, to be able to do more outside of the classroom and be more self-motivated. I'd say some of the nicest students I've taught, I used to teach a group of teachers every Friday morning, and all of the teachers had passed proficiency, so they were all C2 level. And I asked them several times, I mean, you're English, you're near native speakers. Why on earth would you like to come and have English lessons? And they said, well, we love the language so much, and it's a great opportunity to get together and just chat. So, you have students like hobbyists that you'd never get in secondary schools. So I have another question for you. What differences would you expect between a secondary school textbook and one that you use for adult learners? Can you just reflect on that for a second? Okay, different topics, different visual aids, less grammar, real life situations, more pictures. Okay. All right. So again, I think a lot of you have hit on this fact with density. With a teenage book, a secondary school book, there tends to be less words on the page, because the students and the teachers, for that matter, feel that they have to learn and memorize everything on that page before they go on to the next page. So an adult student, we assume that they can make their own choices about what they want to learn and what they don't want to learn. So generally, there are more words and information crammed on the page in an adult book than there are in a secondary school book. You also need more flexibility. So again, you'd expect an adult course to be, more a little bit more self-negotiated between the students. They'll be able to tell you what they want to do, and you'd use a course book. You wouldn't teach the book. You'd use the book to teach the students. So you'd have to have more flexibility in how you'd like to use the book. So modularity is a key. You might have continuous enrollment in a private language school where students join a class throughout the academic year. So you have to make sure that if they join and they start at Unit 3 in the book, they're not suffering because they haven't done Unit 1 and 2. And again, you might decide, if you've only got a short course, to not do Unit 1 and 2 because it doesn't engage the students. The topics don't engage the students. You might want to start with Unit 3. So you'd like to have a lot more modularity in what you do. And obviously, because the motivation is different, you have to have very clear transparency. The adult students, I know that secondary school students appreciate it too, but the adult students really want to know why they're doing what they're doing. And they're not just doing it because it's on page 17 in the course book. They're doing it because it's got a way of improving one element of their English. So there has to be a lot more transparency. And that means clearer learning outcomes. What are we going to do today? How is it going to affect us? How are we going to improve? So we're going through really challenging times at the moment. But even before this last challenge, I think we were going through a period of exponential change. I mean, we're right in the middle of an industrial revolution. We're in the middle of the Industrial Revolution 4.0, as they say, the fourth industrial revolution. Now, none of us were alive for the first industrial revolution. That was obviously when we started having machines and factories and those sorts of things. Sorry, I cut out there. Can you see me again now? Yeah, don't know what. As Marek said, there are some problems with the internet. So sorry about that. Okay, so again, I wasn't even around for the second industrial revolution. Ford, the Model T Ford, the production line. That was not part of my lifetime, but I was around for. Let's have a look. The third industrial revolution. This is where computerization, robots came in. This was in the 1980s, if you like. You can't see my screen. There is no presentation. All right, let's have a look. Bear with me. Okay, and you can see my messy desktop. Let's have a look. I'm just going to have to bear with me for a second. Again, the thing wanted to finish. So if I move this across here and this, let's have a look here, this across here, and then I go to this one. Can you see my screen now? Okay, so sorry for that. Again, technology is something that we're all adjusting to, and it creates some problems. So now we're in the middle of the fourth industrial revolution, and this is the revolution of things, the Internet of Things. The third industrial revolution were humans interacting with machines. Now we're in the format with machines interacting with other machines. we've all heard of those smart fridges that can detect when you're running low on milk or beer in my case, and suddenly they'll notify the shop and the online shopping platform to order more milk for you, and it comes and you put it in the fridge. And again, everything is interlocked. So you don't talk about digital immigrants and you talk about digital residents. We all exist online. We have an online digital footprint. There are very few people who are digital visitors who just drop in and out. The computer knows us. We share lots of data with it. And so we're in the middle of a huge industrial revolution. And I think in changing times, it's good to go back again with the current situation and the fact that we're in the fourth industrial revolution. It's really important to look at people. This is a quote I really like from Charles Darwin. And he says, in times of massive upheaval, it's not the strongest or the most intelligent that survive. It's those that are most adaptable to change that continue to thrive. Here's something for you. You've got the top 10 skills, and this is from the Future of Jobs report from the World Economic Forum, and it's something that happens every World Economic Forum where they look at the top 10 skills that our employers are looking for. And in 2015, these were the top 10 skills. Now, obviously, a lot of those skills are still very important today, but the top 10 skills are in the order of importance for employers. Can you just have a little think? Do you think, what do you think's changed in 5 years? What do you think's become more prominent? What sort of things that aren't in the 2015 list do you think are around now? Can you just have a little look? And of course, Katka says nobody knows now. Well, there are going to be changes, but I think those changes that we're seeing now, which is a move to with the Industrial Revolution, are going to be speeded up by the current situation, not negated. So I think we still know, and if we look at it, we can see that complex problem solving is there. Critical thinking has gone right up, you know, in the time of fake news and all this information that's coming around there. Again, a lot of the things that we're talking about in terms of creativity, critical thinking, problem solving, digital literacy, health literacy, these are all parts of 21st century language skills or 21st century learning skills that have been around 20 years now. So I think here we're looking at very specific skills, not learning skills in education, but specific skills that employers are looking for. So obviously we would expect people who are in the job market to already have digital literacy, environmental literacy, cultural literacy, because we live in a global world, and again, financial literacy. So we'd expect those anyhow as part of their educational process, but these are the skills. And it's interesting to notice that things like emotional intelligence are beginning to appear. We want people to become more human. We're going to have a look at an adult textbook called Roadmap. When you think of Roadmap, you might think of a map with directions on it. Unless you work in business, in which case a roadmap looks something like this. This is a roadmap for my jobs, and of course you can see that it's got traffic lighting, so we know green means okay, red means there's a problem, blue is complete, and amber is on course. So roadmaps are not just directions, but they're also tasks and achievements. And again, with the Roadmap book, we're connected to the global scale of English, and this is an assessment thing. I think when we talk about assessments, we can talk about mastery learning assessment, which is a minimum cutoff point between masters and non-masters. And this is normally what we need for with criterion referencing. The CR is criterion referencing. So if you want to take a B2 examination, you would take an exam and it would tell you whether you passed or not. An achievement approach is very much lifelong learning, and everything is connected to everything else. And I think with the amount of assessment that's around, we can reflect on assessment for us as teachers. I mean, who trained us to be assessment experts? I know when I learned how to teach at the pedagogical faculty, yeah, we were given a little bit on assessment, but the amount of assessments that we're bombarded with now, and all these test scores, I mean, what do the test scores mean? How can we communicate student achievement to students themselves? And how can we avoid students being anxious and student intimidation based on test scores? I think we need to have an assessment device that really motivates students productively, and that's across all levels of education, but particularly with adults. Assessment should be for the well-being of the students, and I don't think in many cases it is. There's this wonderful quote by Rick Stiggins: "Teachers and learners are partners in the assessment process," and I think that's really needs to be true across the board, but particularly for adult learners. Now, we know that there are a number of different exams you can take, and there are a number of different scales you can use to find out what the test scores mean. With the global scale of English, Pearson have developed it for many years, and basically it's a scale of between 10 and 90. Now, there are a couple of other assessment points that I'd like you to consider. Can anyone tell me the difference of assessment of learning and assessment for learning? Let's have a look if we've got any ideas here while I take a sip of coffee. Okay, we've got results versus process, and we've got summative and formative, what I learned and what I have to learn. Okay, yeah, so let's look at assessment of learning, assessment for learning have been in our profession as power words for the last few years, but they're very much linked to summative assessment, and this summative assessment is this mastery assessment. This is the test that you take. It looks back. Yeah, have you learned everything, and are you of a certain level? And again, if you had a proficiency test, that would be summative assessment. I think formative assessment maybe is not a direct substitute for assessment for learning, because I think formative assessment tends to direct the teacher. The teacher observes what the students can do and forms an opinion about the next lesson based on the student's performance. And so I tend to see formative assessment as more teacher information, and I see assessment for learning as this Stiggins quote, where students and teachers are forming opinions of what they need. So maybe it's a little bit more collaborative. When we look at formative assessment, I think we need to realize that you've got long formative assessment, medium formative assessment, and short formative assessment. Long formative assessment is across units and terms, and medium is with and between units, and short is with and between lessons. And of course, we use long-term formative assessment to monitor student achievement and align the curriculums. Are we following what the students need to know? And medium gets students involved and helps them understand the success criteria. So at the end of each unit, when they have to self-assess and see how well they can do things, it helps them have a sense of engagement. But really, the most important formative assessment is the thing that happens in the lesson. It improves classroom practice and student engagement, and the feedback and the moments of formative assessment between tasks is where real learning takes place. So we need to ask ourselves as teachers before every lesson, I think, what do my students want to learn this lesson? What do my students already know, so I can go from known to unknown? How is their knowledge and thinking changing over time and changing over the time of the lesson, of the tasks? How aware are they of this change? And what can I do to help them learn? What evidence do I have that they are improving, and what evidence do they have that they're improving? I think we need to include this in the lessons. Here are a couple of quotes on formative assessment. I don't know if you agree or disagree with them, but I quite like them. If you let the students leave the classroom before you put into practice what you've learned, then you're already playing catch up. And if you haven't made an adjustment before they reappear, it's probably too late. Now, I would say the feedback stage, when you ask the students to do something in English, and then you give them feedback on their performance and you ask them to reflect on their own performance, and then you ask them to have some further practice, this is really where they learn and they improve. One of the things I do, I'm an academic coordinator for summer schools, so I observe, and I've been academic coordinator for universities, and I've done teacher training projects where so I observe a lot of teachers. I think last year I observed about 100, over 100 teachers, and I observed them teaching lessons. And one of the areas that I really felt there was a need for improvement was teachers being able to put in formative assessment into their lessons. I didn't think it happened enough. Now, maybe you're one of those great teachers that obviously includes it, but I think it's something that certainly inexperienced teachers concentrate so much on the materials that they don't spend enough time looking at how the students use the materials and how they're performing. Here's another quote. Changing what teachers think doesn't benefit students until it changes what teachers do. And I think this is true with a lot of methodology. I mean, it's great coming and having webinars and listening to people giving you more information, but until you start actually making it change the way you teach, it's not going to have any effect on the students. And this is something that I feel is really important for my teaching when I teach. The best feedback takes out of the last assignment, so the last task, and feeds in what they want to do in their next assignment. So everything is interlinked. Everything sort of moves forward. They can see what they're doing, and every feedback that you give them helps them form an opinion about how they tackle the next task. As I said, we use the global scale of English with Roadmap and with all Pearson books. I've done some grammar rating for this, so I'm asked to look at different structures and decide, along with many other experts, decide at what level of a student's learning they should be able to use, not know, but use these structures, and for what sort of functions they should use it. So the scale is between 10 and 90, because Pearson assumes that with these basic English words like hotel, taxi, pizza, hamburger, nobody knows nothing. And again, with the amount of technical vocabulary, no one knows everything. So the scale starts at 10 and it finishes at 90. And each point is given a scale, and we've got the different skills along the lines as well. This is for listening, for example, but you have for other things as well. Again, the Global Scale of English is a free resource for teachers, so you just need to go on to gse.com and you can use the course material, and Pearson uses it for a base for their books. Now let's have a look at an adult course book and let's see if we can see what the differences are. This is Roadmap A2 Plus. We're going to start with the very first unit, which unsurprisingly is a getting to know you activity. This is an A2 Plus, but throughout the Roadmap series, there are lots and lots and lots of visual clues on the page. And the visual clues are designed to enable the students to be able to complete the tasks. And I want to show you how these visual clues are used, if you like. But I think most lessons start or should start with the books closed. I feel it's important that you need to do an activity just to make the students realize that it's an English lesson and that it's a skills-based lesson. So we've got very clear success criteria for the students and student learning outcomes delivered for this lesson 1A. Get to know someone, grammar, word order and questions, and question words. But before we got on to that, I'd give the students an activity like, for example, word clouds. I don't know if ever I'll find out the address and I'll give it to you. Don't worry. It's Pearson GSE. If you just put it into Google search engine, it'll come up. Okay, so let's have a look. I've got 10 answers here. Can you think of the questions? Now I'm going to give you some clues because obviously it's very difficult, certainly with simple questions. Well, my mother is in a care home, unfortunately, in Wales, and she's got some dementia problems. I do talk to her, but I don't talk to her on a daily basis because I have to go through the care home, and they're very busy at the moment. So yesterday, no, I didn't. Number two. Yes, I have one brother living in Stockholm, and he is teaching remotely and doing proofreading. I have a sister who is actually in Scotland, and she's in the middle of the lambing season. She and her husband have 5,000 sheep, so it's a busy time. Number three, strangely enough, only once, and it was when I was living and teaching in Brazil, and my students, it was the last lesson of the day, adult learners, and my students said, "We don't want an English lesson. We want to try this out." And of course, I'd seen it on TV where people jump off a bridge and they fly down to the water. Their nose touches the water. In this case, it was a crane in the middle of a building site. So just to give you an idea, here are some letter prompts. Can you think of the questions? Again, I'll give you number 4. I like lots of different types of music. My favorite is maybe folk or world music, but things like Metallica or Iron Maiden, nothing against people who like that type of music, but for me, no, I can't stand it. Again, hard rock doesn't quite fit in, and Metallica isn't hard rock, so we've got heavy metal. Do you like heavy metal? Yeah. So you've got the students critically thinking. There's a little bit of information about me. And again, this is something that you do before the students open their books. And of course, this is the thing that's suggested in a way by the teacher's book in Roadmap. Before every lesson, there's a warm-up activity where you can get students to do stuff. Now, let's have a look at those pictures again. These are the pictures from the first lesson. We can see a number of different things. and we've got some information. Now, remember, we talked about density with adult learners, and so we're exposing them to more than they can actually, the input is going to be far bigger. Yeah, can you speak Portuguese was another one. There you go. The input is going to be far more than the intake. So I'm going to give you a little task here, okay? I want you to jot down on a piece of paper 3 columns: animals, food, and places, okay? And I'm going to read out some words, and I'd like you to try and remember or copy the words into the columns. Actually, maybe we can make it a little easier. What I'd like you to do is just note down how many animals or food items or places I mention and have a number under each column. How about that? Do you think you can do that? If you don't have a piece of paper or pen handy, you can just do it mentally. Okay, are you ready? You're teachers, so I'm going to speak quite quickly. Ham, house, flat, ant, fly, school, toast, fox, dog, steak, apple, grandma's, bee, shop, zoo, pie, pig, cheese. That was quite quick, wasn't it? Let's try it again. Same words. Cheese, pig, zoo, apple, dog, fly, flat, house, toast, steak, shop, pie, bee, grandma's, fox, school, ant, ham. Yeah, it's very quick, isn't it? Again, these are all words that you know, and if you were quick, like Eva, you'd notice that there were 6 in each. Again, part of this is exposing the students to a lot of input and saying, look, it doesn't matter if you don't get everything. If you can pick out 1 or 2 things, that's good enough. So we go back to our input, and again, this is an A2 plus book, and we have 10 answers to questions. And again, if you look at the pictures, can you match any of the answers to any of the pictures? So if you look at the picture of the cat, obviously it refers to yeah. And again, a lot of you are just, I'm seeing the answers to the last question. Let's go back here. One of the reasons I do this activity is because it's important for me that the adult learners understand they don't have to get the answer right. I do something that is too much input. And I say to them, don't worry if I'm exposing you to a lot of input. You just take out of it what you can. And I'm going to give you too much input, so it's going to be very hard for you to get the correct answer. Because there is no correct answer. It's you get what you can out of the task, and we use that to move forward with your autonomy. That's why I do tasks like this. I think it's really important because you have a lot of adult learners, and it might be a long time since their last formalized bit of education, and they still have expectations based from their own, studying of 10, 20 years ago, and they think they need to learn everything. No, they don't. They need to use the material to improve their English, and that's not learning everything. So that's the principle of those activities, because I don't think it was clear for some of you. Okay, so if you look at it, the first picture of a cat is obviously number 8. The picture of the shoes is obviously number 9. Yeah, and again, the records, number 7. So we've got something that we can use to visual clues to make the students show their comprehension. And again, these clues are connected to the questions, and the questions here are from Magda. 10 things about me. So we use the visual clues to pick up this. and we've built on it. Again, let's reinforce our student learning outcomes for this lesson. And then we take another person's answers. So we're transferring the comprehension. We've got Diego's answers, and we get the students to work together collaboratively to find how Diego's answers are different from Magda's. So they work in pairs then, and they'd ask and answer. So we've got a little bit of controlled practice. Again, because it's a modern course book, if the students felt they needed extra practice, they can download an app on their phone, and they can get extra practice on their phone on the way home from the lessons. Now, the important thing about this book is the grammar is seen as communicative. It's not seen as dry and analytical. So every grammar part, and there's a grammar part in every lesson, is connected to the communicative focus, and this is getting to know someone. And so the grammar is always linked to pronunciation. So there's grammar and pronunciation, just so they can be very clear. The grammar is helping them to complete this functional task. Again, a little bit of controlled practice, and then every lesson finishes with a speaking activity. And the speaking activity is based on the student learning outcomes of getting to know someone. And again, I think the important thing with the grammar, here's an activity. I don't know if you do this, but I do this quite a lot. I say to my students, right, okay, let's go back, sorry. If you look at the words at the bottom, here, yes, 7, now, this. And I say, these are the only possible answers to the question, to any question. So you have to choose one of these answers. So when I ask, how many lessons are there in a school day? Your answer is going to be 7. Yeah, that's the only possibility. Or what's your favorite lesson? Your answer has to be this, you know, exactly. And then I say, now the object is to answer my questions before I finish asking them. So if I say, do you like, yes. If I say, how many? 7. If I say, where? Here. And this way the students are focusing on the communicative structure of the utterance rather than trying to decode every word. And I think that's quite useful at A2 plus level. Obviously, I wouldn't do it for higher, but for lower levels, I think it's an important foundation that the grammar is communicative. Now, at the end of this lesson, we might decide, or the students might decide, that they want to do a little bit of listening, or they want to improve their listening skills, or they might decide that they don't, or you might not have enough time for that. So one of the great things about this roadmap book is it has an extended pathway. So you could go on to listening. And of course, we've got the same format, lots of visual clues. Again, there's a book's closed start of it. In this case, it's a paper game. I always get my students to have lots of little pieces of paper. If I ask them, how many ways can you say good morning in how many different languages can you say good morning in? They'll hold up the number of ways in blank paper, yeah? Buongiorno, etc., etc. So that's an indication to me. So I get a lot of pieces of paper moving around. And again, this is the warm-up with the books closed. And then, of course, we've got the inputs, different greetings, very similar to the visual clues. We've got this clear student learning outcomes. Now, this is a listening skill. So the goal and the focus. Again, we've got some hints for this. And we've got the listening text and again, comprehension questions for the listening text, a little bit of Lexis for the listening text. But everything, again, finishes with a speaking task. Let's go on to the next unit. Or the next lesson in the same unit. So 1B. This time I want to see if you can spot these learning outcomes. So here we have 5 pictures of famous people. and we'll ask you to, if you know them, do you think they're successful? What habits do you think successful people have? And you get students to work in pairs or small groups. Here is a little task for you. We've got 8 tips. Can you work out what the eight tips are? What's the missing, the blanked out feeling, the blanked out success? So number 1, successful people always know what they want in life and they work hard to get it. So they have clear goals, etc., etc., etc. So we've got some critical thinking. Then we listen to the podcast so they can check, and then you've got the ideas there, and you put them into ranking order, and then you show comprehension by putting them into a gap fill. And of course, the gap fill leads to a communicative task. So you ask your partners. And of course, the grammar is connected to the always, sometimes, hardly ever. And you've probably worked out that the goal is describing habits and routines. The grammar is the adverb of frequency, and the vocabulary is related to success. And of course, as we said, every lesson finishes with a prepared, structured, because if you're teaching in Slovakia, any speaking activity is going to be pretty unnatural, because you're asking people who can normally speak Slovak to do the same thing in English. So you want to give the students time to prepare and see how they're preparing, so you can give them the formative feedback in the lesson. And again, you get them to speak and you observe, and then you get them to have another go. And then you could go on and do some writing. And again, the writing may be there, it may not be there, but the writing lesson is linked to what they've just done. So if they've just done adverbs of frequency and habits, then questionnaires is a natural continuation of that. Okay, so I think after this lockdown is all over, we'll definitely all need a digital detox week. Go somewhere and get away from technology. Now, if you were to go to this little cabin or hotel or chalet, what book would you take with you to read? What food would you take with you to eat? What music would you take to listen to? What activity would you do there, not on a computer? And who would you take with you? So again, this is obviously the book's closed activity, just to get the students focusing on English. And then we go on to the lesson. This is lesson 1C. We've got describing everyday activities. You can see how it's building on the goals of the previous couple of lessons. Again, everything finishes with a speaking. The prepare is listening to a model, and then the speaking is allowing you and the students to form how well you're doing. And then you could go on and do reading. And of course, the reading is connected to the topics that you're doing. So habits. Now, each lesson, each fourth lesson is a little different. It's very functional, and it's connected very much to a functional goal. So here it's asking for and checking information. A lot of functional phrases, and some great amusing roadmap videos that the students can download so that they can review and practice outside of the classroom, so they can use this fixed flipped approach, if you like. So I like the fact that we've got a modular book. So you don't need to start with Unit 1. You can start with Unit 3. You don't need to do the reading, the writing, and the listening, or you can include all or none of those elements. Some of those students can do it. Other students don't need to do it. So you've got the modularity to create a course that's suitable for the students that you have. At the end of every unit, obviously, you have this formative assessment. You get the students to decide how well they can do things. And if they can't do things particularly well, you give them further practice in it. And of course, when we talk about further practice, we have further practice on a telephone, on a mobile app, or in a workbook, or in the My Grammar Lab, the online portal. And we also have lots and lots and lots of different photocopyable activity that's connected to different aspects from the unit. So this is the photocopyable resource from the grammar in 1A, but we're talking about grammar 2 from 1A, vocabulary from 1A. We've got the grammar 2 or the grammar 1 from 1B, the vocabulary from 1B. So there are lots and lots and lots of extra teacher resources if, when you're doing your formative assessment, you feel that the students feel and you feel they need a little bit more. Again, this is the vocabulary and the grammar from C. So you've got 3 different photocopyable activities for each lesson that you can or you may or may not use with them. I mean, I'm a teacher, and I have to say that I really I haven't seen there are so many different levels of roadmap. I haven't seen all of them. I've seen a few, and I really like the way in which they're organized. The fact that they're very dense, so there's an awful lot of content on each page. Everything has very clear student learning outcomes, and again, it's something that I wish I had some classes to teach this book with, some adult students to teach this book with, because I'd have a lot of fun with it. I've done a few trial lessons. I did last year a couple of trial lessons with some Russian teachers, and they really enjoyed it. But I'd like to get my teeth into it. I think as teachers, we know until you've actually used a book, you can't make a judgment on it. The number of units, I think there are 8 units in the books I've looked at. Okay, and again, one-to-one, yes, I think you'd have to refine it. Again, the principle is you use the material to teach the students, not the other way around. Because it's modular, you can work out with your one-to-one student which areas they want to work on. Not all of them would want to improve their writing, for example, so you'd leave that out. And of course, you'd have to play the role of the student in part of the one-to-one activities and part of the pair work activities. But yes, you could use it for one-to-one. Okay, now remember, if you wanted a sample copy of this, all you have to do is go to the poll section on this page, ask for a sample. Marek and the people at Ventures Books will send you a copy. Enjoy the rest of the online seminars today, and enjoy the weekend as much as you can. And hope to come into contact with you again at some stage. Okay, goodbye.